Welcome back to the Haunted Beard, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. Well, the time has finally come. I finally got a chance to watch my most anticipated movie of the year, and that is Ari Aster's Beau is Afraid. And my goodness, I've got some things to say about it, so here we go. And I can honestly say I have never seen anything like this before. This is one of the most memorable movie watching experiences I have had, at least in recent memory. I sat down on the couch last night and watched it all by myself, and I was not prepared for what I was in for. But man, this is an experience unlike anything I've ever seen. And it's hard to even know where to begin with this movie. I mean, it's a 3 hour long, I think Ari Aster described it as like it's a nightmare comedy. And yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And I was really glad, though, that I watched Ari Aster's short film, Beau, recently discussed and kind of talked about and reviewed all of his short films on my channel earlier this year. But I'm glad I watched that one because this one is taken a bit of that and obviously expanded it to 3 hours. But in watching his short films, and particularly Beau, it really introduced me to Ari Aster's brand of humor. And as I was making my way through his short films, I realized that his brand of humor I jived with quite a bit. And he just has a really odd and unique sense of humor, but I just really jived with it. And he brings that sense of humor here and introduces it into his crazy, horrific world. And man, I ate it all up. I thought it was pretty fantastic. And overall, this is just something else, really. Obviously, Beau is played by Joaquin Phoenix. He is just this very anxious, paranoid, very kind of timid, standoffish guy who has, I'll just say, a lot of mommy issues amongst other things, and is racked with just kind of guilt and just this inner turmoil. And not too long, he finds out that his mother dies, and it just completely destroys him. But then he embarks on what turns out to be this quest, odyssey, journey unlike anything you've ever seen before, just to go to his mom's house to be there for her funeral. And Beau is Afraid, to me, is one of those movies that I was constantly just kind of awestruck and bewildered and confused and disturbed and weirded out. There's a lot of different emotions and things, feelings and thoughts that were going through my head while watching this. And there's sometimes where I was just kind of in sort of this stunned silence. There was many times where I was like, what in the world is going on? How are we supposed to understand this? I'm trying to process things, and everything, I'll say mostly everything in the movie kind of has this sort of hyper reality sort of feel to it, to where you're not really supposed to interpret everything that happens in a very literal way, right? It's very sort of surreal, and there's, symbolism, and there's things. There's just kind of this overrunning theme that kind of runs throughout it, where there's these little connection points, and similar things happen in one scene that feel similar to a scene that happens later. And every once in a while, maybe once a year, maybe twice if you're lucky, I feel like a movie comes along that, for me anyways, it just reminds me of like what movies are capable of. And like every once in a while, a movie just comes along that is just so different and so unlike anything you've ever seen, that it just kind of makes me fall in love with movies all over again, if that makes sense. That is just, it's so uniquely its own thing. And it just kind of reminds me, like, this is why I love movies. And I think Ari Aster now, with this third film, I think he kind of, for me anyways, sort of firmly solidifies himself, I think, in a special category amongst horror directors. That, to me, there's like three guys right now who are working in horror that are just at a different level, that are just making different stuff that kind of just sets themselves apart from everybody else. And is Jordan Peele, Robert Eggers, and now Ari Aster. One of the things that I value most in movies is just simply, creative ambition. And for better or worse, I just want to see a director make the movie that they want to make and just go for it. And I mean, he goes for it. This thing is just epic in scope and just so bizarre and weird and different and funny too. There's a handful of moments throughout the movie where I laughed, and just that sense of humor that he brings to it, that where like there's stuff that's happening that's just, it's so absurd and ridiculous, it's just hilarious, but at the same time there'll be something happening that's very emotional and dramatic and kind of depressing at the same time. There's a particular scene where Joaquin Phoenix is on the phone with the family lawyer, and the guy's just chewing him out because his mother just died, and he's like, Beau, where are you? Why haven't you been here? And so it's this very sort of serious, like emotional and intense and depressing kind of moment. But then there's the guy in the background who's like freaking out and running around and jumping in the pool and stuff like that. And it's just like this weird mixture of like absurd dark comedy mixed with, emotional sadness and everything, all sort of blended together. And this movie, like the tone is just all over the place, but man, I just thought it was fantastic. That scene really stuck out to me. I thought it was hilarious. And I just love that Ari Aster just goes for it. Not only do I value ambition greatly, but also when a film is able to truly like subvert your expectations, there's just something so fun about watching a movie where you have absolutely no clue where it's going to go. And I mean, this is just a prime example of that. There's just no possible way you could. It is kind of devoid of for the most part, it's like completely devoid of any sort of typical narrative structure and storyline. And it is a wild and fun ride. I think Joaquin Phoenix does a really great job with the character. I think all the kind of the tones and the emotional beats that he needs to pull off, he pulls it off. I mean, there's sometimes where you pity him, sometimes you sympathize with him, sometimes you can't help but just laugh at him and his whole predicament and situation that he's in. And sometimes just seeing Joaquin Phoenix react to the chaos and insanity that's happening around him, you can't help but just laugh at it, because again, it's so ridiculous, but it's just great. There's a sequence roughly halfway through the movie where Beau connects and meets up with this traveling theater, and there's this like partially sort of animated sequence that I just found fascinating and astonishing and kind of awe-inducing as well, where it's just kind of unlike anything I've really seen before, and this is just a special experience. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's a movie too that I think there's just a whole lot there, and there's still a lot of things that I don't quite understand. I don't know if you can fully understand it. I obviously have sort of a general idea of what the entire movie is about, and kind of have a good understanding of kind of the main themes that Ari Aster was going for, but there's definitely still some things there that I'm not entirely sure what to make of or entirely sure how to interpret. But that's one of the things where I like when filmmakers do that. Obviously, I like some ambiguity and stuff like that, because it makes me want to go back and rewatch the movie again, which is another huge thing for movies with me, that if it makes me want to go back and rewatch it, then usually I'm all about it. And so this movie has ambition and creativity for days. It subverted my expectations pretty much every step of the way. It definitely made me want to go back and rewatch it again. So I really don't even know what to grade this thing. I think it sort of transcends a numerical grade, but I will say it is the best and most special thing I've seen this year, and the most special experience I've had watching a movie this year. Yeah, Ari Aster, man, I just think he's in a completely different level. So I understand it's a pretty divisive movie. For all the reasons that I loved it are going to be the reasons why some people hate it and think it's absolute trash. And you know what? That's okay. But man, I had a great experience with it. This thing is absolutely wild. And Yeah, if you haven't seen it yet, go check it out because it's pretty great. But anyways, those are my thoughts. Hit me up down below. I would love to hear your thoughts. Like I said, I know this is a divisive one, but let me know what you loved about it or why you absolutely hated it. So either way, love to hear from you. That's all I got for you. Thanks for watching. Please hit that subscribe button. Just like always, it is all horror and thriller movie content coming at you here, and I'll see you next time on The Haunted Beard.